Yep, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kurt Brown with eXp Realty and the Lead Generation Academy. So welcome to the second week. So we got past the first week, which was just incredible. The comments and responses was unbelievable. And I want to thank you all for coming in and enjoying it. So the second week is going to be how to increase the responses to your marketing. And Kevin's going to get started with that. And let's see if we all can't learn something. Kevin?
Perfect. Well, that was fast. Cool. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get down to work. Are you seeing my screen now? I hope. Yes. Okay. I got a thumbs up. Perfect. All right, cool. So today what we're going to be talking about is how to generate more responses to your marketing. So if you tuned into the training last week, what we talked about was how to generate a pipeline of high quality leads using Facebook as the tool to do that. And so the whole concept was we wanted to build a funnel where not only are we adding new people to that funnel consistently, but we take care of the people in the funnel. And as we repetitively market to them, that's where we're generating high quality leads, because they are continuing to experience you. They're learning more about your background. They're seeing the results that you can help them achieve. And through that repetitive cycle, that's when people start contacting you. And when leads are contacting you, that's when you're going to start having conversion rates that are more like 50, 60, 70%. So that is the nature of what we talked about last week. And today really just dovetails and fits right into that. So today we're going to talk about how to generate more responses to your marketing. And what we're going to be focusing on is more about your marketing message, what it is that you're actually communicating to people. So what I find in the real estate industry, as I talk with agents all the time, is that they're just not as focused, and as their marketing message kind of misses the mark just because of the way they portray it, and it'll make sense as we get into it. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Number one, we're going to talk about how to instantly separate yourself from the rest of the competition. So real estate is one of those fields where in most parts of the country it's extremely competitive. There's typically lots of agents, and most people know more than one. So here where I live in the state of Utah, there's about 16,000 agents statewide. And most people, if you talk to them, they usually know at least one, if not more than one, real estate agent. So because it's a competitive field, we want to have a way to instantly separate yourself and give yourself an unfair advantage over everyone else. So that's obviously a huge part of this, is having an unfair advantage. And when you see what we're going to talk about today, it's so easy to separate yourself and just create that advantage. I'm going to show you a marketing formula that's going to give you 2 to 3 times the responses from your marketing as you use it. So again, I find the same problems with people's marketing message over and over again, and today we're going to help you fix that. And I'm also going to show you true style like I normally do. I'm going to show you lots of screenshots, lots of examples, just to give you some ideas of what this can look like for your business and how this can help you. So again, just to kind of reiterate, this is what we talked about last week. The whole concept that we do through Facebook is we want to create all of these different audiences of people based on ones you have relationships, your past clients, your sphere of influence, your page engagement, people that are engaging with your page, the events, the video views, the website traffic, Instagram profile. That as we create audiences for all of these people, it allows us to be able just to repetitively market to them as they come into this funnel. And that's where we create trust, is through that repetitive of them seeing your successes as an agent, you know, the just listeds, the just solds, the under contracts, as they see the type of results that you're getting from people, the testimonials, if you're doing videos, all of that just builds trust to the point where people come through this funnel and turn into a transaction at the bottom. And so that is the overall philosophy and the strategy that you'll hear me talk about all the time. So today is more about this side. Well, really, we're talking about this side as well. Both sides of the funnel, where we're adding new people as well as taking care of people in the funnel. But like I said, all we're talking about today is just your marketing message. How do you refine your message so that more people respond to what you're actually doing. So to that end, let's just go ahead and jump in. So a consistent lead generation strategy, it's often the piece that separates average agents from top producers. So as I have talked with top producers throughout the country and in lots of different areas, the funny thing is if you were to sit down with a top producer and talk to them about what they do to work with their buyers and what they do to work with their sellers, the truth is you'd probably walk away from that conversation being very unimpressed. Because they're probably not doing a whole lot that's different than what you're doing to work with your buyers and sellers. But the part of the business that they have figured out that makes all the difference in the world is that they have their marketing and their lead generation working for them. They're constantly doing that. So because they have their marketing in place and they're consistent in doing it, they just have more opportunities than the typical agent does. And so hopefully with what you're going to learn today is I share with you how to ramp up that marketing message and improve what you're communicating with people. This will level the playing field a little bit and help you get into that top producer status just because of the way that you're communicating with people. So again, having the right strategy is everything. So we talked about real estate's a super competitive field. And because it's competitive, if you don't have the right strategy, generating more response and more leads, it becomes really difficult. And it's just because you blend in, you become the same as your competition. And since there's a lot of it, it kind of just becomes white noise for the people that are seeing your marketing or hearing what it is that you're talking about. So we want to have a way of cutting through that very, very quickly. So that's the ultimate question that I want you to be asking through all of today's training. How do I stand out from the competition? Because if you take in what I'm going to share with you today, that will never be a problem for you again, right? How do I stand out from the competition? So here's how we do it. My definition of marketing is this. It's find a limited market and seek to dominate it totally, right? Find a limited market and seek to dominate it totally. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they try to be everything for everyone. And as they try to be everything for everyone, that's when they end up actually being nothing for no one, because you'll see as we go through today's training that the marketing just misses the point. So the fastest way that you can ramp up a message that's going to get you that's going to stand you out from the competition and start getting responses is this principle right here. Find a limited market and seek to dominate it totally. So our objective is we want to position you as the leader so that when you're talking with your prospects and the people that you're marketing to, they realize they'd be crazy to go do business with someone else because they're not going to get the same experience, the same level of service, the same level of expertise. And so because of those things, that again, they would just be crazy to go somewhere else. So generalities are the death of marketing. So let me explain what I mean by that. A lot of agents market themselves in a way in what I would call the Me2 Syndrome. Okay, so Me2 Syndrome is this. So for those of you who don't know my background, I didn't really do a huge introduction today. I think a lot of you, just looking at the names and such, I think most of you know who I am. But my story is 20 plus years ago, I got into the real estate industry, and I was a 22-year-old kid, and I knew nothing about nothing. And so as I started marketing myself as a real estate agent, no one ever trained me on how to market myself. You know, when you go to real estate school to get your license, they don't teach you about marketing and about lead generation. They're just teaching you all the laws and the rules and the regulations so that you can do what you do without, you know, getting in trouble. So unless you've learned how to market yourself, unless you've learned lead generation from somewhere else, the simple truth is a lot of people just struggle with that. And so using myself as an example, when I got into real estate, I didn't know how to market myself. So what I did was I looked at what other people were doing and I simply just tried to copy it. This is what Me Too marketing is all about. I don't know what to do, so Me Too, I'm going to do the same thing. So Me Too marketing looks and sounds a lot like this. So things like, I have the lowest commissions, I provide the best customer service, I'm full service, I do everything. You know, I've been in the business for 10,000 years. I've done 10 million transactions. I've got all these designations. I'm your agent for life. That's funny. I know an agent who markets himself that way. And here's what's funny about it, right? So think about it. How many of your leads, your prospects, the people that you're marketing to, how many of them are looking for their quote unquote agent for life? Right? The answer is none of them. Or to say the same thing differently, how many of them are going to Google or to Facebook or to any of those major places where people spend time? And how many of them are searching for agent for life? Exactly that many of them, right? And so this is the problem with marketing yourselves this way is people come up with these cute little phrases and these things that they think makes a difference, but at the end of the day, it's not what your prospects are looking for, right? So the whole point of this is we want to get to a point where your marketing message resonates with what they are looking for and what they need. So again, this is the same rhetoric and the same thing that they hear from everyone else. So when you market yourself in this way, that's the biggest problem, is you're not standing out. You're just blending in like everyone else. So this is where I use a technique that I call a market domination statement. So let's talk about what that is and how we build one. So the market domination statement, think of it as the way that you introduce yourself. So your introduction is going to be one of the fastest ways that you appeal to people based on what it is that you can help them with. So I like to think of it as your market domination statement is the answer to the question of what do you do for work? And people ask you that question all the time. And so from my experience, most real estate agents, the way they introduce themselves is they typically introduce themselves in one of four ways. So a lot of times people will say, I'm a real estate agent. I'm a realtor. I work for XYZ brokerage, whatever brokerage it is. And then the fourth way that people typically introduce themselves, this is the advanced version. They'll typically say something like, I help people buy and sell houses. Right? And so that's the advanced version. But most people are responding with their title or their profession. And here's the thing, when you answer one of those four ways, the response that you typically get from most people is something like this. Oh, okay, cool. And oh, okay, cool is code for I know 10 other people who do the same thing, and I'm probably related to one of them. One of them is probably my brother-in-law, right? Because again, the reality of most real estate markets is that a lot of people know more than one real estate agent. So when you introduce yourself in any of those four ways, when they respond with, oh, okay, cool, that just means mentally they've lumped you in with this whole batch of other people that they know, because their perception is that you're just the same. And so that's the problem with introducing yourself that way is you just get lumped in with the competition. There's no way for you to stand out. So it's just a huge disconnect, because if you introduce yourself the correct way, the way that I'm going to teach you here in just 1 second, it becomes not only an easy way to stand out, but you start getting responses and start generating leads naturally just as a result. So with that being said, the market domination statement has 3 different components to it. So we want an effective introduction, an effective way to introduce yourself and talk about what you do would be to answer these 3 things. So number 1, who it is that you work with. Number 2, what their biggest problem is. And number 3, how you solve that problem. So who you work with, what their problem is, and how you solve that problem. If you can introduce yourself and incorporate those 3 things, not only is that the basis of a powerful introduction, but it's also the basis of a formula and a methodology that you can use for all your marketing, as you're going to see today. This is really the foundation of it. So one of the easiest ways for me to teach this is just to give you some examples, right? So let's say, for example, that you do a lot of work with first-time home buyers. Well, one of the common problems that first-time home buyers run into is that they don't have the money for the down payment. So what if you introduced yourself like this? I work with first-time home buyers who don't have the money for the down payment. I show them 5 ways to overcome that so they can buy a home today and stop wasting money on rent. See, when you introduce yourself like that, typically what happens is one of 2 things. So the first thing that often happens is the person that you're talking to, or the person that's reading your marketing, when they see or hear this, they are part of that target market. And because this is part of what they're struggling with, right, it's often that their response to this is, well, how does that work? Or how do you do that? Right? See, in that moment, what's happened is you've now created a new lead, a new prospect. They've responded, right? How do you do that? How does that work? I want to learn more. So that's typically the first thing that will happen. The second thing that will happen as you introduce yourself like this is, let's say you're talking to someone who is not a first-time home buyer. Well, because you've been so specific about what you do, typically what happens is their mind starts thinking of people who fit that description, right? So the second response that you'll often hear to something like this is they'll say, well, you need to talk to my brother John. He's trying to buy a home and he can't come up with the money, right? So again, what typically happens is either they are part of it, they're part of that target market that you're going after, or because you've been so specific, they start thinking about people that fit that description. And you get a new lead, a new prospect, a new referral that way. So this is just one example of a way that you can appeal to people. Let me show you a couple of other examples. So let's say you're a buyer's agent. You do a lot of work with buyers. So here's just another way of appealing to people based on a different problem and a different solution. So I help families on a limited budget buy homes larger than they thought they could afford. Right? Again, so just appealing to a different group of people with a different problem. Let's say you do a lot of work with real estate investors. So if you have investors that you work with, here's a way of appealing to them. I help busy real estate investors locate investment properties that add millions to their net worth while limiting their downside risk. Right? So again, when you have a powerful introduction like this, it just instantly separates yourself. Right? So can you see how you just have an unfair advantage? Because think about your competition and how they're introducing themselves and how they're marketing themselves. They're probably saying the same four things that we talked about earlier. They're probably saying, I'm a real estate agent, I'm a realtor, I work for XYZ company, or I help people buy and sell houses. See, the good news about marketing in the real estate industry, and please take this with a grain of salt, but for the most part, most agents have absolutely zero idea on how to market their business. So the good news is that from a competition standpoint, even though there's lots of competition, the bar is really low, right? There's lots of opportunity to improve and change the way that you market to generate more opportunity. And so if you take a little time just to think through this process, you're going to come up with a great foundation for all of the marketing that you do. And like I said, you're going to see that as we go through the rest of the class today, that this isn't just the way that you introduce yourself. Yes, that's kind of the framework and the baseline of this, but that becomes your marketing message for everything. It goes on your website and your business cards and the things that you're doing on social media. It just becomes that same message from start to finish, right? So again, it just makes you the obvious choice to do business with, even if they know other agents, even if they are related to another agent. You can often win the business because when you introduce yourself this way, you just instantly separate yourself. And then, like we talked about, this is just going to become the framework of all the marketing and everything that you're going to do, and you're going to see that through the rest of today's class. So I love this quote. So it says, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan your mission properly. And I fully believe that. So if you find yourself where you're competing for, working with a buyer or working with a seller, if you're competing and working against other agents and it's a fair fight, like the person literally doesn't know which agent to work with, then my response to that would be you didn't plan properly. Right? And that's what this is all about, is just planning properly and giving yourself that edge, that advantage. So again, the components of a market domination statement are who you work with, the people that you help, what their problem is, and then how you're going to solve it. So my recommendation would be some point today or in the very near future, carve a half hour or an hour out of your schedule and just sit and brainstorm. So you'll find that if you spend a little bit of time just thinking through this and coming up with some different ways to introduce yourself and to talk about what it is that you do, it makes all the difference in the world, right? So that would be one of the first pieces of homework I would recommend for anybody based on today's today's class in the Lead Generation Academy is just take some time to figure out what that competitive advantage is, right? So it's all about just being able to articulate it. And like we said, this becomes the framework of all your marketing. So let me show you how this works. Or in fact, let me get into the second part of this. Now that you've got the framework of how we introduce ourselves and how that introduction goes, let's talk about this formula that's going to help you put that message into context that's going to make people respond so that you're generating more leads, more responses as a result. So how many of you, in fact, if I were to open up and to talk, which is kind of hard in this format, but I would suspect that most of you have probably had this experience where you've put together some kind of marketing piece for your business. You were doing some kind of advertising, marketing, whether it was print or direct mail or social media or open houses, whatever it is that you're doing. And how many of you put all this time and effort and money into something? You were super excited and you release it. You're expecting your phone to ring off the hook and nothing happens, right? I would suspect that most of you, especially if you've been in the business for any period of time, you've probably had that experience where you put all this time and money and effort into something, you were expecting results and it didn't work. Well, there is a process to marketing. There is a formula for this. And there's a reason why you didn't get the results that you were looking for. So what I'm going to do here in the next few minutes is I'm going to show you a marketing formula that just consistently produces results and takes a lot of the guesswork out of this, right? So if you could reduce the guesswork and improve your marketing two, three times. In fact, I've even seen people do 10 times the results of what they were doing previously by implementing what I'm about to share with you. So that's what we're going to focus on in this section, is how to create a marketing material that generates more leads. So the main problems with marketing and advertising is that there's two big problems. So according to Media Matters, they state that on average, we're exposed to about 600 to 625 marketing messages per day. So whether it's ads on the radio or television or internet or direct mail and on and on and on. Now, I've heard different numbers. This is the one that frankly seems realistic to me. I've heard numbers that are higher, some that are lower. But for the sake of teaching, who cares? I don't really care what the number is, but just for the sake of example, let's say that this is what it is. Let's say that number is 600. So question number one is, of all those ads that you're exposed to every day, how many of them do you actually remember? Right. I would suspect that most of you are probably thinking one, two. I would be surprised if any of you are saying more than like 3 or 4, right? So because of that, since you really don't pay attention to most of those messages every single day, the simple truth is that 99% of all marketing and advertising has zero impact on you. Isn't that good news coming from the marketing guy? Right. So the first truth is that, and this is not just an isolated case, it's the same for everybody. Very few people remember more than just a couple of ads per day, right? And so that's the first truth, is that most marketing has zero impact on you. But that leads us to the second one, which is, let's say that there were 2 or 3 messages per day that you actually remembered, right? So the next question is, of the ones that you do remember, how many of them did you actually become a customer, right? How many of them you actually purchased their product or their service and you became a customer? See, of those 2 or 3 that you do remember, I would suspect that you probably didn't, right? You probably didn't become a customer. So the truth is not only are you oblivious to 99% of the marketing that's going on, but most of it doesn't turn into actual tangible business because you didn't become a customer of them. So with that being the case, right, it just begs the question, how do we get this to work and how do we make it so that people want to respond? So let me give you a real life example and show you how this works. So this screenshot right here, this is an ad campaign from about 6 years ago. This was super, super popular. So not only was it one ad, it was a series of ads that this company did. And if you remember it, it was this baby who was, it was like he was on the computer. There was a webcam very similar to this. And the baby was just sitting there talking about all this money that he's making in the stock market, and he's clicking away. And I mean, it was funny, right? This was water cooler talk. So people would, it was huge in pop culture. So everybody was talking about how funny this was. Again, because it was popular, they did a series of these ads. And in fact, they even did Super Bowl ads for this. I mean, they spent tens of millions of dollars on this campaign. So as I talk about this, because it's very popular, let's just put it through the same filter. So question one, how many of you actually remember who this company was? Now, if I opened it up and you started answering, every time I do this, typically about 20% of the people that I talk to can remember who the company was. So statistically, about 20% of people can tell me who the company actually was. And for those of you who are curious, the company was E-Trade, right? So E-Trade put out this ad, and in fact, these series of ads, and that's what happened. Now, of the 20% of you, or however many it is, that actually remembered who the company was, again, it's the same question. How many of you become a customer of E-Trade because of this ad? And I've taught this class and this concept to thousands and thousands of agents. And of all the times I've taught this, only once has somebody said, yes, Kevin, I became a customer because of those ads. So again, I would suspect that based on my experience, the vast majority of you did not become a customer of E-Trade because of this marketing. So the point is if your marketing isn't producing real results and real responses, then my comeback to that is you really should spend your time and your energy and your efforts and your money doing something that's going to produce real results, right? Otherwise, in my opinion, you're just kind of wasting your time. So with that, what a lot of people don't realize is what actually happened. See, because this was popular and because people were talking about it, most people on the outside would have called this a quote unquote marketing success, right? But this is the aftermath of what happened from that campaign. So there in that second paragraph, Chief Executive Officer Paul Idzik said soon after his arrival in January 2013 that E-Trade was taking the wrong approach to marketing and should be more scientific in measuring how its message resonates with clients. He fired the marketing director, Nick Utton, lots of other executives, and he replaced the marketing company who produced it with another advertising agency. So again, what people don't realize is that this, even though they spent lots of money on it, and even though it was super popular, it wasn't producing results in the form of tangible business. So it begs the question, well, how do we get this to work? The reason why it didn't work is that there's components in their marketing that was missing. So I'm going to recommend a marketing formula that's going to take the problem and the guesswork out of this process so that you're going to be able to find success where a lot of people struggle. So that formula is exactly what you see here. There's 4 pieces to it. So number 1, it's the interrupt. Number 2, to engage. Number 3, to educate. And then number 4, the offer. So interrupt, engage, educate, and offer. So let me break down each piece of this and show you how this works. And then I'm going to show you lots of examples just to drive it home. So number 1, the interrupt. Anytime you are marketing and doing any kind of advertising for your business, I don't care whether it's direct mail, social media, your website, your business card, brochures, anything that you're doing for marketing purposes, your first objective is that you are competing for people's attention. You are competing for people's attention. We live in a day and age where people are so heavily marketed to, and their attention is being, so many people are competing for their attention that everyone just kind of has that ADD, squirrel thing going on, right? They start doing something and all of a sudden their attention is elsewhere, and on and on and on throughout the entire day. So when you think about the people that you're trying to market yourself to and get their business, those people are being exposed to the 600 ads per day, just like you are, right? It's no different. And so you have to have a way to be able to stand out, grab somebody's attention, and get them engaged and get them to start going through your marketing message. So the interrupt is a statement or a question that is focused on a problem that they have. So here's what I want you to be thinking about. We talked about how there's probably only a couple of marketing messages per day that you actually pay attention to, if that many, right? So I want you to think about the ones that you do pay attention to. What was it about that message that made it stand out amongst that sea of all those other messages, right? What made that one message or two messages stand out? So in some cases, what you're thinking about is, well, Kevin, it stood out because it was funny. So humor is definitely a level of, or a form of interrupt. It's a way to grab people's attention. And you're going to say, well, sometimes it had something that was shocking or something that surprised me. Shock and surprise is another form of interrupt, right? Sometimes it's a certain style of message. So I don't know about where you're at in the country. I would suspect it's probably uniform across the country. But here locally where I live in Utah, like when the monster truck show comes through town, you hear the ads on the radio and it's always the same guy's voice. Sunday, 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 right? It's always that same voice. And it sounds like he's just super excited and yelling into the microphone. And so that is a form of interrupt. But as we're talking about these different forms of interrupt, I would suspect that for the vast majority of you, the reason why one of those messages stood out to you was because it was based on a problem that you were currently facing, right? It was something that provided a solution or a potential solution to something that you're facing. And because you're having that problem and you need it, that's why it stood out amongst this sea of all these different messages. So the simple truth is there's lots of ways to interrupt and grab people's attention. In fact, a lot of the major marketing companies, so like the major advertising firms, they are really good at this principle. They are exceptional at interrupting and getting people's attention based on humor or based on shock or any of these other things that we've talked about. But a lot of those require a lot of creativity and it's hard to duplicate. So the one way that I can teach you to interrupt people that is going to be successful across the board is provide a solution to a problem that people are facing. Since that's a reason that one of these messages stood out to you, we want to use that same principle to market to the people that you're trying to get their interest to, right? You're going to get their interest by focusing on a problem that they're facing. See, this is the problem with saying, I'm a realtor, I'm a real estate agent, I help people buy and sell houses. Frankly, those are not problems that anybody is facing, right? They have no reason to care about that message. So one of the fastest ways I can ever teach anyone to interrupt and get someone's attention is by focusing on a problem that they have. So once you've got that figured out, where this belongs in your marketing is the interrupt should be the first thing that anyone sees or hears, right? It should be the very first statement that anyone sees or hears. So whether it's your website or a social media post or again, I'm going to show you examples in lots of different formats, but this is a principle and a formula that will work with any kind of marketing that you're doing. But you want to make sure that that interrupt statement is the very first thing that people see or hear. So that's the very first part. This is going to be your headline. Okay. The second part of the formula is to get people to engage. So once I have gotten their attention by focusing on a problem that they have, the second part is I want them to engage and go through the rest of my marketing message, right? So again, the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to start presenting a solution to the problem that I just brought up. Okay, so step one is to interrupt, and I'm going to focus on a problem that they have to get their attention. Once I get their attention, I'm then going to show them a solution to the problem that I just brought up, because that's going to get them to go through the rest of the message to see how that solution applies to them. So where the engage statement belongs in your marketing is in the subheadline. This should be the next thing that people see or hear depending on the format of whatever it is that you're using for marketing, right? So the solution to the problem is your engage statement. The third step in this process is to educate. So I focused on a problem to get their attention. I've now shown them I have a solution to that problem. My third step is I want to educate them about what is different about doing business with me. So again, you're working in an industry where there's lots of competition. And so we want to make sure that you're going to be able to stand out from that. So now that they know that you have the solution to their problem, it's time to educate them as to what they would get from doing business with you. And we want to position it to the point where people realize they would be crazy to go do business with somewhere else, right? Because they're not going to get the same experience and the same outcome and the same results. So educate is where you're going to be talking about what makes it different in working with you and your background and your expertise. Okay. And where this belongs in your marketing message is this is the body of your marketing message. So truth be told, probably about 75, 80% of the marketing that you're going to do is going to be this step, the educate, talking about what they're going to get by doing business with you. Okay. So one of the tests that I tell people to run all the time on their marketing, just to see if it's hitting the mark through this process, is I want you to take your name and your brokerage that you work with. I want you to take that out of your marketing and substitute your competitor's name and your competitor's brokerage. And if you're reading through that marketing and that still makes, and it still works, then you haven't done a good job separating yourself. You need to spend more time on this step, educating people. What's different about doing business with you, right? And again, this is where it goes in your marketing messages. This is the body. So a lot of it is going to be educate, but see, if you leave out the other two steps, the interrupt, your first problem is you probably don't have their attention, so they're not going to read through this. And the second problem is they don't know, or the second problem that you're having with the marketing is that if they haven't read through what your solution is, frankly, they don't even know why they care, right? They're probably not going to read through this. So to educate people without the other two steps, it just doesn't work because that's the problem. Nobody knows why they should care, right? And then our fourth and final step is the offer. So now that they realize that you are the clear solution to their problem, the question is, what is the next step? What is the outcome? What do you want them to do next? So depending on the nature of the marketing piece, your offer could be something different. It could be, to ask them to call you for a free consultation. It could be, let's set an appointment to go see the home. It could be downloading a free report, like a buyer's guide, a seller's guide, or something like that. And again, I'm going to show you some, in fact, lots of examples. Most of the rest of today is just showing you examples of how to implement this. So it could be like a free report or a limited time offer, a free market analysis. There's all kinds of different next steps that we would want someone to take. But whatever that next step is that we want them to take, we're just simply going to invite them to do that. And so this should be what we call the call to action. It's what you're asking someone to do. And this should be the very final thing that people see in your marketing. So inviting them to take that next step with you. Okay. So let's take a look at some examples. I'll show you how to make sense of this. So what I have here is a screenshot of a real estate agent's website. In fact, this is for this is a brokerage website. Now I blocked out the brokerage name. That way I don't feel bad about beating them up. And it's not so much about beating them up as it is just showing you from a prospect's perspective, the people that you're marketing to, why this doesn't resonate with them. So what I've done is I've just taken a screenshot of a website. And frankly, just between you and me, I didn't have to go searching long to find a very common example. So I did not go find the worst of the worst. This is probably very common for what most people's marketing is on their website. So let's just put it through the filter of what we just talked about. So let's go through those 4 steps. So number 1, we talked about an interrupt, where the headline is going to be focusing on a problem or some kind of issue that someone is facing, right? Just to get their attention. So we talked about the best place for that is the headline. So you can see here that there's two different options as far as what you want to call the headline. So we could make a case that the headline is this part that says the real difference in real estate, or it could be that little phrase underneath their logo and the name that says real estate and insurance since 1864. So we can make a case as to either of those being the headline, but frankly, I don't care, pick one, right? It doesn't matter. So the question is, how many prospects are searching for the real difference in real estate, or real estate and insurance since 1864? Or to say that same question differently, how many people are going to Google and searching for the real difference in real estate? The answer is exactly 0 people, right? It's nothing that anyone is searching for. So when you're viewing this through the eyes of your potential prospect, does this grab your attention? And I'm guessing that all of you are saying, Kevin, no, of course it doesn't, right? Now, the second piece of the marketing formula that we talked about was the subheadline. So the engage, where we're showing people a solution to the problem that we just brought up. Okay. So since the engage, the solution is the subheadline, frankly, the subheadline here that makes the most sense as far as it being the subheadline is that statement that says Buffalo real estate and homes in Western New York. Okay, so again, put on your prospect hat for a second. Is that providing a solution to a problem that you're facing? Is that going to keep you engaged? And I'm guessing that the answer to that question for all, if not most of you, is no, that doesn't do anything for me, right? That's not solving anything. There's no reason for me to really keep engaging with the website. Okay, that's the second piece of this. The third piece is the body. So in the body, we're talking about educate. What makes doing business with them different than doing business with the rest of the competitors out there? What's the unique outcome or the unique advantage or the unique way that you work with people as to why they should do business with you and not someone else? So in this case, as we start reading the text down here at the bottom of the website, so down here it has the brokerage name, and it says blank has been the region's expert in real estate and insurance since 1864. We know Western New York, its history, its neighborhoods, and its most intriguing properties because we live here, we thrive here, we love it here. So again, is there anything in that verbiage that gives you an idea as to why you should do business with them and not somebody else? Okay, the answer is no, not really. There's nothing that explains what that clear outcome is that they're going to get by working with you. Now, if you want a rule of thumb to size up your marketing very, very quickly, here's the rule of thumb. You want to look at the ratio of I's and we's to you's, right? Look at the number of times you're using I and we compared to the number of times that you're using you. See, the biggest problem with this is if you read this carefully, this statement is not about the prospect. It's about the company, right? And again, if you look at it, we know Western New York, we live here, we thrive here, we love it here. This has nothing to do with the prospect. All they're doing is talking about themselves. See, in the real estate industry, the two biggest mistakes that almost everyone makes is number one, all of their marketing is focused on them. Right? They want to talk about how awesome they are, how long they've been in the business, all the designations that they've got, how all the awards that they've won, their production. Everything is me, me, me. And the thought process is the way that I'm going to earn your trust and convince you to do business with me is I'm going to tell you how awesome I am. But the problem is that's completely backwards because frankly, and I don't mean this rudely, your prospects, they don't care. The only thing that your prospects care about is themselves, right? Because they don't know you well enough yet to even care about you. And again, it's not meant rudely. It's just the point is you're missing the mark by talking about yourself. So when agents, and I hear this all the time, people will say, well, Kevin, I need to tell them about my background so that they know to work with me. And again, you've got to be careful. Frankly, let's say you've been in the business 20 years and I know this is going to sound weird, nobody cares that you've been in the business for 20 years. And everyone fights me on this. They don't care that you've been in the business for 20 years. What they care about is what your 20 years of experience can provide for them. Because of your experience, you can probably provide shortcuts and tricks and things to help them get better results. They care about that more than the number of years you've been in the business. So again, it's not about the level of experience, it's about the outcomes that you can provide for people. That's what they care about. And then the fourth step is the offer, right? Inviting people to take the next step. So as you're looking at this website, the closest thing that we have to an offer here is inviting people to go search for properties. And in today's day and age, especially with most real estate websites, that's a feature that you can do on just about any real estate website out there. So it's not that unique of an offer. So the bottom line is when you start analyzing this and putting all the pieces in place, you can see why they're not getting a huge response from their website. So does it have a good interrupt? No, there's nothing that speaks to the client's potential problem, right? The headline is just the company name. Frankly, they don't care about that. Again, there's not a good engage. There's no subheadline focusing on how to solve a problem for someone. The educate portion is equally bad. There's nothing that's talking about being able to, as to why you want to be doing business with them. And then the offer, it was just a really weak offer. The closest thing is just being able to search for properties, which you can do just about anywhere. There's nothing that's going to separate yourself there. So it's easy to see why it's not standing out and not getting results. So the bottom line is, will a website like this produce a response or produce leads? And my response is very few, if any, right? In the way that I look at it is the only way that website is going to produce a lead for someone is if someone had already made the decision to do business with them, and they're just going to the website to get the phone number or to get the contact information. But you'll also notice if you look at that website that there's a problem, right? They're making it really hard to get their contact info. So I would recommend that you put your website, especially on the homepage. I would recommend putting it on every page of your website, but specifically the homepage, because if you're forcing people to go search for the contact information, you're really making it hard for people to do business with you. And I would tell you that there's just no reason to make it difficult. So you can see why people just get frustrated that they're not generating more response. So let's start showing you some better examples. Again, when you implement this, you'll easily see the 2 to 3 times the response rate of anything else that you're doing for marketing. So just to give you an example, let's say that we've got an agent who wants to focus on first-time home buyers. That's a very common niche in the real estate industry. So one of the challenges that that group of people commonly face is they don't have the money for the down payment. So that's going to be the problem that we're going to focus on in the marketing. So let me show you I just want you to see what happens. So as you know, I'm a big Facebook guy. So let's say that we put together a Facebook campaign for first-time home buyers. What if they came across a post like this on Facebook? Hey, do you want to buy your first home? I've created a free report that shows 5 ways to buy a home without paying for a down payment. You can go download the report by clicking here, right? And if you start breaking down the components of this post, you'll see that it's the exact same template and the components are there just like we talked about. Now, it looks a little different because the interrupt is the main headline. That's usually one of the first things that people see is that big bold text right underneath the photo. So that's the place where we would put the headline or that interrupt. And we've also got a little bit of it in the question at the top where it says, want to buy your first home, right? That's the problem, the challenge that people are facing. So we've put that in a couple different places, but you'll notice all the components of that formula that we just talked about are here. Now, when they click on that link, it's going to take them to a page that's something like this. So this is called a landing page, and don't worry about the terminology. Landing page is just terminology for online marketing, but all of you have seen something like this at some point in your life where you've clicked to a website, they're asking you to fill out a form, and that's the way that they're capturing a lead. That's all this is. But again, you can see the point. Hey, frustrated renters, do you want to buy a home but can't afford the down payment? Here's this free report, details 5 ways to buy it or to download it or to get a down payment so that you can stop wasting money on rent. And again, when you break down the components of that, all 4 components that we talked about are there. It's just a way to simplify this process and make sure that you're hitting the mark. So in this case, in this example, the educate portion is this short little 90-second video. Again, videos are awesome because people get to see your face and they hear your voice and they start developing that name recognition with you. Where a lot of agents screw up when they're doing marketing like this is when they record that video, the mistake that they make is they talk about how awesome they are, right? That's not what this should be. What that video should be about is what people can expect to get from the report, or how awesome the report is, and maybe even a testimonial from someone who bought a home without a down payment. Any of those are much better content for the educate than you talking about how awesome you are. Because again, your prospects don't care about you yet. They don't know you well enough to care about you. All they care about at this point is themselves, their needs, their problems. And if you provide a solution, that's what's going to make people respond, right? Now, can you see the difference? Can you see why changing your marketing like this increases response rates to at least 2, 3, and sometimes even as much as 10 times? Because we're touching on a pain point for a target audience and we're offering a solution. And it works with any kind of marketing. I'm going to show you some examples of business cards and such. But one of the things I hear from people all the time is when I talk about specific marketing pieces like this for certain groups of people, everyone always says, well, Kevin, what happens if somebody comes to that site who isn't a first-time home buyer? You know, in other words, what they're really saying is, Kevin, if I only focus on this group of people, I'm missing out on all this other business over here. So let's address that. Here's the thing. So let's break this down just so you can see it in the proper light. When we talk about first-time home buyers, common problems that they face, we've talked about a down payment, credit is often a problem, just their lack of familiarity with the home buying process and how that works. All of those are common problems for that group of people. If we switch gears and talk about empty nesters, okay, they have real estate problems as well. It's just a different set of problems. So they have problems such as yards that are easy to manage, or being able to buy a home that doesn't have stairs so that they don't have to deal with that issue, or being able to move once. You know, how do I sell the home I'm currently in and buy a new one without having to move twice? Again, they have problems. It's just a different set of problems. And just for one more, let's talk about real estate investors. They have real estate problems too. So some of their problems are being able to locate good investment opportunities, being able to purchase it in a way that lets them profit from the property. Sometimes in certain markets, they have challenges finding tenants, or they have challenges finding contractors to help them fix up the property. Again, they have problems too. It's just a different set of problems. So we've talked about 3 different groups of people, and for the sake of teaching you, we'll stop right there because that's enough. The question is, with these 3 different groups of people that have 3 different sets of problems, from a marketing perspective, how do I create one message that's going to resonate with all of them? And the answer is you don't. It's impossible, right? There's no way to create one message that's going to resonate with everyone. And this is why the biggest truth from a marketing perspective is that when you are marketing to everyone, you are actually marketing to no one, right? I'm not, when I talk about going after a niche and focusing on a problem of a certain group of people, don't mistake me. I'm not saying to ignore all the business over here, right? You can still do all that business that you want. I'm just simply saying this little piece right here, this is your marketing message. You can still work with investors and empty nesters and everybody that you want to work with. I'm just talking about your marketing message. See, when people try to appeal to everyone, it's the same watered down marketing message you've heard your entire real estate career. And the most appealing that they can be is, I help people buy and sell houses. It's just not that exciting. Right? There's nothing in that message that makes any of those groups of people want to respond, because there's nothing compelling there. So The whole principle is when you're crafting a marketing message, you want it to focus on one group of people solving one problem, because all that does is drive up your response rate. And that's the whole point of this. So let's take a look at a business card here. So most business cards in the real estate industry, again, they typically look something like this, right? So again, I haven't picked the worst of the worst. This is just a very common, typical business card in the real estate industry. But again, these business cards don't get people to respond. They don't produce results. So in my opinion, the back of the business card is a huge missed opportunity for real estate agents. So if I were to gather up the cards of everybody that we're talking to today and look at the back of the card, I'm going to suspect that on the back of the card, I'm going to see one of four things. So either number one, it's blank. They didn't know what to put back there, so there's nothing there. The second thing I'm going to see is the brokerage logo. So they've also got it on the front of the card, but they put it on the back because they didn't know what else to do with that space. The third thing is the goofy statement of the greatest compliment you can ever give me is a referral. I can't tell you how much I hate that statement. I mean, here's the thing, right? I hate it because it's goofy. No one in your life has ever given you a referral and said, well, I'm doing that to give you a compliment, right? Nobody in their life has ever done that. So, I mean, it's goofy just from that standpoint. But you don't want to know the biggest problem with business cards that have this statement on it? Think about it. The people that you're giving a card to, in 99% of the cases, these are people that you're meeting for the first time, right? That's why you're giving them a card. They have zero reason on the planet to give you a referral. The people that are going to give you a referral are not the people that you're handing your card to. So it's just a misplaced statement that strategically isn't getting you anywhere. And that's the biggest problem that I have with that statement, besides the fact that it's a little goofy, is the people who see it are not the people that are going to refer you, right? And then the fourth problem is sometimes I see a list of everything we do. We help people buy and we help them sell. We work commercial, we do investments. It's a big laundry list of everything that you do, right? So I would suspect that most of you have one of those four things on the back of your card. Again, there's just ways of being more strategic about what you're doing with your marketing. So let me show you an example. Here's what I would call a very strategic business card. At the very top, I highly recommend putting a headline. So a headline should be focused on a problem. Have you heard this before yet today? It should be focused on a problem that people that you work with, that they face. So in this case, again, I'm using that same first-time buyer niche because it's a common one. And so if you've got a headline at the top that says, hey, own a home without a down payment, is that going to get people's attention? Yes, right? This is a business card, so obviously we want all of our contact information there. You do want your brokerage logo on here. You have to do that for compliance anyway, so put it on there. You do want a photo of you. We live in a day and age where people want to connect names and faces, so I would tell you you're doing yourself a disservice if your photo's not on your business card. You'll also notice right underneath the photo, there's a quick little testimonial. As weird as it is, I recommend putting testimonials on your business card because we live in a day and age where people shop you. Right? They're going to go to your Facebook page and they're going to go to Google and they're going to go to these places to look at reviews. So if you control the process, you make it that much easier. So I recommend putting one right on your business card. And then you'll notice there's this big blue ribbon that says, see the backside for an offer. And when they flip over the card, what they see is something like this. Hey, renters who want to buy a home. Do you want to buy a home that don't have the down payment? Click here to go get this free report off of my website. Right? Cards like this, not only do people hold on to them longer, but they take action. And this is a way that you can actually use a card to generate a lead for you, right? They have a reason to now go back to your website and keep engaging with you. And if you break it down, it's the same format that we've been talking about all day today. Interrupt, engage, educate, offer. Again, no matter what it is that you're doing for marketing, business cards, websites, brochures, social media, it doesn't matter. That same formula, you can use it to get better responses to what you're doing. So that is the whole focal point of today's class, is using this methodology to get more responses from your marketing. It's all about your message. See, when you have that watered down message, if you want to know the truth, you can take what you learned last week where I showed you how to start creating a funnel of people, a database of people on Facebook that you're repetitively marketing to, and you can set that up and keep marketing to them. But if your marketing is, hey, I'm a great agent. I've been doing this for 10,000 years. You really should work with me because I do a lot of business. Frankly, it doesn't matter how many people you have in that funnel. Nobody cares is the simple truth, because you haven't talked about them. Again, if you took anything away from today's class, I hope that you'll take two principles away. Number one, review everything that you use for marketing and put it through this test. Put it through the 4 pieces that we've talked about: interrupt, engage, educate, and offer. And if it doesn't fit that, then you're missing the boat. So the first thing that you want to pay attention to is the marketing talking about me, or is the marketing talking about them? Because the marketing shouldn't be about you, it should be about them, right? That's the first thing that you want. The second thing that you want to review from today is that, again, the second mistake that most agents make with their marketing is they are so vague, right? Because they're not talking to one group of people. They're trying to be everything for everyone. And you really want to hone in and focus on one group, one message, one thing, because that's what gets people to respond. So if you review your marketing and it's so vague that it doesn't appeal to anyone, again, you're missing the mark. You want to refine that and change it. Because the moment you do, that's when you instantly start standing out. You instantly start cutting through the competition. And again, it makes all the difference in the world. So that is today's class on how to generate more responses from your marketing. And again, that's the whole message, is just refining who your marketing is about, going through that formula and appealing to people in a way that gets them to respond. So Kirk, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I hope you guys feel like me. I feel like Kevin took a sledgehammer and beat me over the head about my marketing, and definitely was speaking to me. And, we've heard a lot of this stuff over the years, and, a lot of us have been, selling for years, and, a lot of us are doing the same things. So I think differentiation, I've been using that word for a long time, maybe 20 years in my sales career, over 30 years. The last 20 years, I've talked about differentiating. And it doesn't matter if you're selling widgets, lawn care, real estate, take your choice. You have to differentiate yourself. And so taking and honing in on a small market, or I say a market, and branding yourself to that market. Some of the most successful realtors in the world have, of course, written books about it, but have done it within a 2 to 3 mile radius of their own home. It's because they honed in and they branded themselves. And so you have to do that in order to be the neighborhood or community specialist. So as we try to tie all this down, I love the fact that, and I was thinking about the ad, I just did my video and I finally finished editing it, and I'll be running my ad pretty soon to my database, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back and look at that and make sure. But I think based on the video, because it was less than 50 seconds, I hit all 4 key points. And you got to make an offer to them. You have to be able to resonate with a certain group of people, and the others will pick up those pieces. They'll know that you can help them too. Okay. So
yeah, and that's a great point. So just to kind of that point, like a lot of people say, well, what happens if so I'll go back to the first time home buyer, right? So what happens if I give somebody my first time home buyer niche, or my first time home buyer pitch, but what happens if they're an investor, right? So here's been my experience. My experience is you're probably going to make an impression because you stand out. And if that person needs real estate help, let's say they're a real estate investor, right? So chances are what they're probably going to say is, hey, do you also work with investors? At which point, obviously, if you feel comfortable with that, your answer should be, of course I can help you, right? So my experience is it doesn't deter everyone else. It actually makes an impression to where they want to work with you as well. So again, that's one of the, in my opinion, one of the myths people fall into is they think if I focus on this part of the business, I'm missing everything else. And my experience is just the opposite happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I have clients that I stay in touch with and have become friends and stuff. And the first thing they'll do is say, hey, can you do commercial? Because really everything, 80, 90% of my business is residential. And then vice versa for your commercial agents. They have residential questions too. But if you're at the front of mind, then obviously you're going to get that call. We don't get them enough. You know, when I think about the commercials, and I have an 8-year-old running around here, right? And he'll hear, if the radio is on, he'll hear the O'Reilly Auto Parts, and he can sing it. He can also sing the General because it's Shaquille O'Neal. He's a big Shaq fan, right? And everybody knows Shaq. But to him, he's the General. He don't know him as a Hall of Fame basketball player. But he can tell you what the General is all about. Geico comes to mind, right? And also Liberty, the Liberty commercial, because they're just shoving it down our throats. But they found something that works. What's different about them than us? Absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Right? So, Kevin, thank you so much again for opening my eyes and continuing to help us all grow. I think it's been a heck of a day. I've got to head to an appointment, and I'm going to have some windshield reflection time about who I am and what I am trying to do. And I'm going to drop the I and the we to you, because that is the most important thing. So, guys, thank you again. We're going to see y'all. Hopefully, we'll be back on track next week for 9 a.m. Central. And Kevin's going to have another spectacular, epic class for us all. So thank you all. Let's have a fantastic week finishing up selling. And we'll see y'all next week with the Lead Generation Academy. Thanks, Kevin.
You bet.